As you know, we are artists, and as artists, we're going to be focusing on collage. You probably already know lots about collage, but just in case, collage is a way of making art where different parts are cut or torn and stuck down to make a new picture. Sometimes this is paper, sometimes this is something you've painted or drawn, sometimes these are pictures from magazines, sometimes it's bits of writing from a newspaper or a book. It could be all sorts of things. Collage began to be used in art around 100 years ago, a little bit more than 100 years ago. And many people say that the first person to really do this was someone called Pablo Picasso. He's a really famous artist who was born at the very end of the Victorian era and died about 50 years ago. So this is a piece of art by Picasso. It's called Bottle of Suze and it was painted, or it was made, in 1912. So at the beginning, artists started adding bits of paper to their paintings. They didn't make it all out of collage, they added paper to their paintings to make a collage. So first of all, what can you see in this piece of art? It's called Bottle of Suze. I wonder if you can spot the word Suze. I wonder if you can spot a bottle. I wonder if you can spot anything else. What different kinds of paper can you see? I can see newspaper all around the sides and maybe a little bit of wallpaper at the bottom, and I think probably where it says the word Suze, that might be a piece of paper as well. Can you tell which parts are paper and which parts are paint? Here is another piece of art by Pablo Picasso called Guitars. He made this between 1912 and 1914. And this one is almost entirely paper with maybe some drawing on top. It's called Guitars. Can you see guitars in this picture? I think I can see bits that look like guitars, but I can't see just a picture of a guitar the way I might expect. This is called abstract art, and it's often used in collage because it's quite hard to make something that looks really realistic with torn up and cut up paper. So it's okay to make something that looks a bit like what you mean, but not exactly realistic. That's a really good way of making art. And again, what kinds of different paper can you see? In this picture, there are lots of different kinds of paper. So Picasso has used two different kinds of wallpaper. One of them is already really faded and really worn away. The other one has got these brown flowery shapes on. So he's used two different kinds of wallpaper, probably just bits that were lying around his house. He's used some ordinary white paper for the bit that to me looks most like a guitar. He's used some thick brown paper, maybe from something like a paper bag, or you might use something like a packaging box from something that's been delivered to your house. That would look really similar. And he's used some newspaper too. And he's chosen his different bits of paper so that the different colours are quite similar, but work really, really nicely together. His background is just a blue piece of paper, and he's also drawn over some of his shapes to add a bit more detail. We're jumping forward in time now to some art that was made only 2 years ago. This is by somebody called Deborah Shapiro, and she is a modern collage artist who is still alive today and making art even now. So this is a piece of art called Visionary, and as you can see, this is much less abstract. It's very realistic, but it's made entirely of bits of paper cut and torn from a magazine. Why do you think this piece of art is called visionary? And what kinds of different paper can you see? I'd like you to look really, really closely. From far away, this picture looks exactly like an owl. But if you look really closely, you can start to see the different bits of magazine that she has used. Can you see anything unexpected in these pieces of paper? I can see a black and white eye near the top, not the owl's eye, a person's eye. I can see some hands at the bottom. I'm fairly certain that owls don't have hands under their chins, so she picked them for the way that they look from far away when you look at the owl. And I can also see some rings in the corner. Can you see anything that might be a bit unexpected? Maybe some words or some patterns that you wouldn't normally expect to see on an owl, but all of a sudden they start to look a bit like an owl. Here's a collage that you have already seen. Lauren Child, who writes all the Clarice Bean books and also the Charlie and Lola ones, she uses collage for all her illustrations, and you've already heard Miss Molam talk about that a little bit. So Lauren Child, just to remind you, uses photographs or bits from magazines and her own drawings. Sometimes she makes collages from just her own drawings that are cut out or ripped and stuck on top of each other. You have made a collage already. Who remembers making one of these at the end of last year? You cut things out from cards and magazines and stuck them onto something that you had painted yourself. This is another really interesting modern collage that has been made in the last few years by someone who is still alive. We're going to be looking at this more closely later, but this is called In Search of the Enchanted Whale, and it's made by a man called Matthias Jung. What do you notice about Matthias Jung's collage art?